The 100% property tax in Spain is no longer just a rumor, it's a real possibility that could come into effect this year. If this tax is approved exactly as proposed by the Spanish government, anyone who isn't a tax resident in Spain or another EU country will have to pay an additional tax equal to 100% of the property's purchase price. If you're a foreigner, it's completely understandable that you're worried, and it's not just your case. Just to give you some context, I work alongside my father, a lawyer and tax advisor in Spain for over 30 years, and even though we have clients from Germany, Poland or the Netherlands, the truth is that the majority of our clients are British, Americans and other non-EU nationals. The question is, can Spain really approve a tax that in fact prohibits foreigners to buy property in the country? Well, let's quick review how many times Spain had to challenge European courts. Back in 2014, Spain faced serious trouble with the European Court of Justice. Why? They had an inheritance and gift tax that unfairly discriminated against non-residents by denying them regional tax advantages. The European Court of Justice, from now on ECJ, clearly rejected this, forcing Spain to amend its laws accordingly. Moving forward to 2018, Spain found itself once again on the losing end. The Spanish Supreme Court stepped in to address discriminatory inheritance and wealth taxes targeting non-EU residents. Spain was required yet again to remove these discriminatory practices to comply with European standards. Then, in January 2022, Spain encountered another major legal defeat. The ECJ ruled against Spain's controversial Modelo 720, who imposed severe penalties on residents and non-residents who failed to declare their worldwide assets. And currently, Spain is involved in another legal dispute related to the non-income resident tax and especially how it affects property rentals by non-EU citizens. I actually made a video a few months ago that didn't get much attention, so I will leave it here and also in the description. I hope that you also understand that I'm not going to be giving in this video every single detail of all the cases between Spain and European Court of Justice. But if it's a matter of your interest, please leave it in the comments, subscribe to the channel, share the video, and I'll do it in the following weeks. If we see the historical precedents, anyone would tell you that this tax is not going to get approved. Are you sure? If someone like me, a young tax advisor in Spain working alongside my father, who is an experienced lawyer, can clearly see those issues, you can bet the Spanish government's legal team sees them too, and of course they will do whatever they can to make this tax legal. And here is where things start getting interesting, because before we jump into the EU regulations, we have to see what happens with the Spanish Constitution, because at the end, that's the first guarantee that we have here to stop governments from planning these kind of taxes. But I beg you to watch this video until the end, because it's harder than you might think to explain. Initially, it might seem impossible for the Spanish government to implement this tax. After all, property taxes in Spain are managed individually by each region, not directly by the central government. This regional management is guaranteed by the Spanish Constitution itself. In other words, introducing a national level tax that overrides or duplicates regional property taxes directly conflicts with the constitutional principle of regional autonomy. Moreover, there is another major constitutional problem. Spain's constitution explicitly prohibits taxes that can be considered confiscatory, meaning taxes that are excessively high, effectively stripping owners of the property's real value. Given this clear constitutional barrier, how can exactly Spain bypass these restrictions? To push this tax forward, the Spanish government is basically doing legal gymnastics. Let me explain you what I mean by this and also why I'm genuinely worried. And not only because of the tax itself, but also because of the time that it might take to overturn this tax if it finally gets approved. The government's strategy relies on a clever technical loophole. They are claiming that their new nationwide property tax will not technically interfere with the existing regional taxes because, formally, it's designed as a complementary tax. They previously used exactly this argument 2 years ago when introducing the controversial tax on large fortunes. This tax overlapped directly with regional wealth taxes, creating obvious contradictions and legal tensions between the central government and regions in Spain. Now, I must be very clear. From a legal perspective, the argument that the Spanish government is using in order to approve the 100% property tax is very weak. And more important, it's not honest, because of course it interferes with the actual property transfer tax that each region in Spain manages individually. For example, some regions have it at 7%, 10%, 11%, but it is basically the same tax. The only thing is that they call it complementary, and it will only get activated if the buyer is a tax resident from outside the European Union. But the rest is completely the same. And now we get to the root of the problem. In Spain, the ultimate authority to determine if a law complies with the Spanish Constitution is the Spanish Constitutional Court. And I will make it short. Again, this will be a matter of another video that I will make in the future, but the Spanish Constitutional Court is influenced by the Spanish government. So you can clearly see that when there's a tricky decision, casually, most of them, and nowadays I would say all of the decisions made by the Spanish Constitutional Court align with the Spanish government. So you can clearly see that. So this is why I'm telling you that I'm worried about this tax, in the sense that the first barrier, and that's the Spanish Constitution, Spanish Constitutional Court, I think is not going to to block this because, well, I think I gave enough arguments, but let's not be pessimistic because thanks to whatever, by now it might feel like I'm taking you on some emotional roller coaster. At the beginning of the video, I told you not to worry. Later on the video, I raised serious concerns. Well, what is this about? Well, I'm just trying to be as truthful and transparent as possible so you can get a full picture of what's really happening here. Thanks to this and other videos that I make that you can check after watching this video, I get contacted regularly by people that are looking to buy, sell properties in Spain. We're not real estate agents, okay? We are independent lawyers and tax advisors. That's why if you are looking for these services, you can directly book a consultation with us. The link is in the description of the video, or you can also send us an email or a WhatsApp, so you'll have all the information here and in the description of the video. So let's continue with this. Despite everything we have talked about, I'm still confident about the fact that the new Spanish 100% property tax is not going to get approved. Why? Because there is still one massive obstacle, and this is the European Union. If Spain's Constitutional Court approves this tax, this immediately escalates into a European-level issue. Anyone impacted by this measure can immediately report Spain to the European Commission for breaking some fundamental EU rules. And believe me, the European Union doesn't mess around when it comes to protecting this principle. So why Spain's new 100% property tax is clearly against the European Union rules? First, the free movement of capital. This might sound technical, but it's actually pretty straightforward. Article 63 of the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union explicitly prohibits any restriction on the movement of capital, both between EU countries and between EU countries and non-EU countries. It guarantees that any person from outside the European Union can buy property, invest money, or carry out financial transactions freely within the European Union, just as us Europeans can do. But here's the key point. Any tax that effectively blocks or strongly discourages such investment is considered an illegal restriction. Now let's apply this logic to Spain's proposed 100% property tax. Imagine you want to buy a house in Spain worth 300,000 euros. With this tax, you would pay an additional 300,000 euros just in taxes. That's double the actual price. It doesn't take an expert to see that this makes the investment practically impossible. Under European Court of Justice rulings, even taxes or measures that indirectly discourage investments in the European Union are completely forbidden. And it's not going to make a difference that Spain calls this tax complementary, additional tax for non-residents. Look, the European Court of Justice is going to see the tax and is going to say, does it disencourage the investment? Yes, absolutely. This tax needs to be forbidden. Second, clear discrimination based on residence. Let's quickly understand what this means. The European Union, through Article 65 of the Treaty on the Functioning of the EU, allows certain differences in tax treatment based on residence. And this is a big but. These differences must meet very strict conditions. Any difference in taxation based on residence must be justified by an objective, significant, and clearly demonstrable reason. It also must be proportional, meaning that the measure must be the least restrictive option available to achieve a legitimate aim. The question is, does Spain's 100% tax on property meet these strict criteria? And the answer is that absolutely not. Let's summarize. Spain's proposed tax directly targets non-EU residents, explicitly imposing a massive financial penalty solely because of their place of residence. Spanish and EU citizens would pay zero extra tax, whereas anyone living outside the European Union would pay 100% extra. According to the European Court of Justice's established case law, specially highlighted in the 2014 landmark decision against Spain regarding inheritance and gift taxes, discriminating between residents and non-residents without solid justification is illegal. Spain already lost this exact argument in court once before, and this new tax repeats the same mistake, only now it's even more severe. You could think, but Spain has a real housing problem, so it's enough to justify this tax. But the European Court of Justice doesn't just accept generic arguments. And please, don't get me out of context, don't get me wrong, the housing problem in Spain is real. I'm going to talk now briefly about myself. Last year I was working in a law firm in Madrid, and I had to leave the city and go back to work and live with my parents because I couldn't afford a house in Madrid with my salary. I'm not talking about buying a property. I'm not talking neither about renting a whole apartment for me. I'm talking about renting a room that was decent. And I couldn't afford that. You see the Spanish salaries, you see the Spanish housing prices for rentals, for buying, especially in big cities, and it's unbelievable. But even though I have personally experienced this issue, this doesn't mean that I have to jump onto the populist argument that no, foreigners buying property is the reason why I cannot afford property. Look, this is so I want to tell you one thing. If you want me to do the best English video about the housing problem in Spain, the real reasons behind it, and why it's so hard for us Spanish people to buy a property in our own country, please leave a like, share the video, all this stuff, and I will do it. But I can guarantee you one thing. Foreigners buying property in Spain, the less of the problems that we have in related to the housing problem. Having covered the two main reasons, I think it's already clear why the European Court of Justice would likely reject this tax, but let me briefly mention a couple more principles that reinforce this conclusion. First, there's proportionality. 100% tax is blatantly disproportionate under EU standards because clearly there are other less severe measures Spain could apply. Secondly, implementing a sudden, drastic tax like this also violates the principle of legal certainty. EU law demands stable, predictable rules to ensure investor confidence. Abruptly imposing an unprecedented and extreme tax undermines market stability and deters international buyers who need clarity and security when investing in Spain. As you have clearly seen, the European Union's legal framework really protects any investor doesn't matter where he's from these legislative or tax proposals that, yes, are really crazy. But there is one more important thing that needs to be said, and is that even if after watching this video you are very confident about this tax not being approved or getting rejected one day, well, you have to understand that things don't move quickly in the legal world. What do I mean by that? Well, once the tax passes Spain's constitutional court, the legal battle in Europe might still take months or even longer. During that time, you will almost certainly come across some alarming news, headlines, or worrying discussions online, particularly in Facebook rooms or forums aimed at foreigners buying properties in Spain. If you have been watching the video and paying attention, now you have a very solid understanding of the situation. I know it's very hard sometimes not to worry when you are seeing Facebook groups or you are reading the news, but well, what I can assure you is that as a legal and tax advisor and as someone that works alongside his father, as I said, lawyer and tax advisor as well in Spain for over 30 years, I take these videos really, really seriously. It took me a long time to gather all the information, to present it in a way that is comfortable for you to watch, and well, it's an honor for me, because at the end this is my work, but at the same time I love communication and all that. So well, if you enjoyed the video, I would really appreciate if you share it with people that might be interested, you subscribe, you hit the like button. You can also ask me questions, give me topics to talk about in different videos. You can check also other videos that I have about taxes, rental laws in Spain, all that stuff. So well, thank you very much as always. Hope you enjoyed it and have a good day. Bye bye.